Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Today I am here with Nanci Reed. We are going to be talking all about the secrets to manifesting sustainable happiness, emphasis on the sustainable. So super excited for this topic. This is going to be so much fun. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at Her Talk Show. Listen, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This podcast is guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
Welcome and hello. If you're listening live, I see you. And if you're listening on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay in the comments section so we can send you some love after the show. Listen, we've had over 600 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today, Miss Nanci Reed. She is a happiness mindset coach, author, speaker, spiritual teacher, and Pilates instructor. She supports heart-centered, intuitive women value their self at the level of their biggest dream, not their doubts, without the paralysis of perfectionism or self-judgment, by using a mindset of deliberate kindness and curiosity to transform their mind, body, and spirit so they can manifest sustainable happiness and abundance on every level. Welcome, lady.
Hi, thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction.
Yes, I love this. And I really love the part where you say, without the paralysis of perfectionism or self-judgment. I think so many of us are dealing with this issue. What is wrong
Absolutely.
with us?
Well, that's the question, right? That we always want to direct towards ourselves is, what is wrong with me? But what I'm encouraging women to do a little differently is, instead of what is wrong with me, is to go into a space of curiosity and wonder rather than judgment. So that you're asking, well, what purpose has this been serving me to have this perfectionism? Right? What is it protecting me from? What is the goal that it was trying to attain by having me show up this way? And when you start to go into that space, then you actually make more space for the information to meet you authentically, without any sort of defensiveness or, any kind of feeling that you need to explain or blame away or compare yourself or shame yourself from anything. If you can't see it all, then how could you possibly heal it all?
Ooh, she's coming right out the gate. Right out the gate with some goodness. I freaking love this. I'm just thinking the first thing that comes to mind when you are saying all of this is the wonderful impact that I am imagining this happening on our relationships.
Entirely. And that's the thing, is that when you experience this in the relationship that you're going to be in the longest, which is with yourself, then you have an example and a classroom, so to speak, to be able to extend and expand this into each of your interactions. And so you can keep bringing that mindset led by curiosity and what I like to call deliberate kindness. There's nothing random about this. And that you are getting to then approach relationships, your interpretations of those relationships with a sense of empowerment, rather than feeling at the effect and not having any say in how you're seeing things.
Yeah. I know you talk a lot about deliberate kindness and how that has helped you a lot on this journey. First of all, I know you have a story behind that. Can you share the story. And then also, and we'll probably get a glimpse as to what it means. But yeah, I'd love to just kind of, what does this mean? Deliberate kindness.
Well, so I've heard so many things out there, particularly in the self healing, self help, personal development spaces, and everything. And I'm sure it's coming from the very best intentions. But when we say kindness and then we add a modifier in front of it and we say random, then I feel like that we're actually disempowering the intentionality that was necessary in order for that mechanism to come into being. Whereas instead, if you approach it from that this is a deliberate decision of kindness, then that means that you're a part of the experience on a decision making level rather than apart from it. So even if the person, let's say that you're sharing or extending this seemingly random act of kindness with is someone you've never met before, there's still a deliberate decision that you've made on some level to
Hmm.
show up and be there in this way with this individual.
So random kindness versus deliberate kindness.
Exactly.
I've never even thought of this before. Does deliberate kind or does deliberate kindness take away from the heart-centeredness of it?
No, not at all. Because again, you can still be heart centered within and then want to share that outside of you. And the thing is that we can't fully share something unless we have it within us. And so that's where this idea comes from is that you must have some sort of essence within you on that energetic level of kindness in order to be able to share it externally. And by sharing it more, you're actually creating more of the experience of deliberate kindness, not less of it. So it's one of those resources that when you decide to extend and expand it deliberately, you're actually making more of it rather than experiencing any sort of loss or lessening within yourself.
Wow, okay. So it's almost more intentional
Mhm.
kindness
Exactly.
versus
Exactly.
just like whenever.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that there's a decision you make first within your own mind that I'm going to align my mindset. So, in other
Wow.
words, the lens that I'm perceiving my life through, my interactions through, with deliberate kindness. And then I'm going to show up in the world. And so I'm going to be the consistency within me on the level of my mindset, and then everything that seems to happen outside of me that may or may not reflect that same decision, I'm still going to be able to interpret it through that lens of intentionality.
Got it. This is what this is actually reminding me of, and I'm really appreciating this. There was a time in my life for probably around 4 or 5 years, and I totally forgot about it until literally this moment, where I intentionally would go out into the world, and anyone who looked at me, I would smile at.
Mhm.
All day long, people would smile at me because 'cause they'd smile back. So I was constantly surrounded by smiles all day, every day because of the intention that I had set in making eye contact, and anyone who looked back at me, I smiled at. This is kind of the same exact this is the same exact concept of that, and I can 100% attest to the more concept that you're talking
Mhm.
about.
Exactly. And so it's not about denying. It's not about that you're just putting a happy face over something, right? That's not at all what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is on the level of like basically your essence. So the core of who you are, you're aligning with that smile, with that energy of that smile. And then you're showing up And you're knowing that by sharing a smile, you're not losing a smile internally. You're actually expanding the essence of that internally. And then you're reminding others what's possible for them too. And
Mm.
sometimes people will literally say that their entire day changed
Yeah.
because one person noticed them and found them worthy of receiving a smile. So, how
Yeah.
could it be so simple, right? And it does seem simple on the surface, but it's actually really profound because what it's saying to that other person that you're meeting eyes with is, I see you. We're not different. We're the
Mm.
same. We can share this experience of a smile together. And the smile can mean so much more. It can be so much bigger than the actual act itself. And that's where the intentionality and the deliberateness comes from.
Mm. Absolutely. I absolutely love this. Do you have any stories or client stories on the benefits of this? Of like, some amazingness that has happened from intentionally or deliberate kindness?
Yes, actually, that's where my entire deliberate kindness project called 32 Favors came from, is from my personal experiences with seeing the very unexpected quantum manifestation tool that deliberate kindness actually is. Because what happened, let me tell you the whole story actually. I'll try to give you 8 bars of it. But so what happened was 15 years ago, 2009, I found myself living in Los Angeles, the city of angels, and not knowing a single person practically at all in the whole city. And I had gone there to have a fresh start, to open a business that I believed I was worthy of having. And I believed that I had these talents and these abilities to be able to help my clients. But it was also in the middle of an economic downturn. So it wasn't exactly the most ideal timing to be moving to this huge metropolis where relationships really are what build businesses.
Mm.
And I was very, very, very discouraged because I had tried so hard. I had done everything, quote unquote, that I could to be perfect about how I was starting this business. I had literally walked up and down Ventura Boulevard, for those of you that are familiar with Los Angeles, and I had gone door to door to these different boutiques speaking about my business, which at that point was offering Pilates for people, especially using rehabilitation for Pilates of specific injuries and chronic conditions. And then also offering my coaching services from my background with a master's in organizational psychology with an emphasis in emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. So I was kind of marrying these two ideas together and also bringing in my spirituality and my spiritual thought system that I was studying at the time and still do and now teach, called the Course in Miracles. So I had all these different things that I was trying to put together into this business. And I had rented a space and for my business, and I had also rented an apartment. So I had those two things that I was having to show up and have income for. And here was the thing is it came to this point where I was like, wow, after I pay these next rent checks on both my living situation and my working environment, I don't know where the money's coming from.
Oh.
And that I really surrendered to this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give my notice. I'm going to give my notice. And my parents were right. And I shouldn't have tried to start this business during the recession and all these things, you know, and I really felt a lot of shame about this because there was this part of me that had always known on a very intuitive level and had been highly empathic that I felt like I was meant to have my own business. I felt like I was meant to be this vehicle for other clients to approach their bodies and their minds and their hearts with this essence of kindness. But I hadn't really experienced this in a like project sort of sense before. It was just something that I kind of came into innately. And so I was ready to give my notice. And then I heard that very gentle inner voice speak within me. And she was basically like, you know what? Why don't you go take a nap first? Like, you've worked so hard at this. It's not really going to matter if you wait a few more hours before you give your notice. Just go home and take a little break because you've been trying so hard. And I was so exhausted at that point. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I went home and I took this nap. And during this nap, I had the most amazing lucid dream. And so I was very aware that I was dreaming in the dream. So I was watching myself as this dream figure in the dream, and then also being aware of the dream itself. And in the dream, I was in this high hurdles race, and I needed to complete the race in order to cross the finish line. And here's the thing, every time I would try to run to the hurdle, I would either fall or crash, or I would stop right before it. I was like, I run up as fast as I could, and then I would stop because I didn't want to go over it. I was afraid. And so one of these times I finally decided to, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to go over it. And I did, and I fell really badly. And then I became very aware as I was watching the dream and then also being in the dream that I had a choice as that character to either stay on the ground and be beaten up and bloodied and feel defeated, or to get back up and do my very best. And that the only way I was going to cross that finish line and see what was on the other side is if I was willing to run an imperfect race.
Wow.
And that is what led me to cross the finish line and then have the most amazing of experiences that brought me into a decision to not give up and to instead recognize that I was worthy of being seen and heard, and that I had my hands and my feet and my voice, and that there was value in them. Even if my bank account didn't reflect that there was an inherent value to my time, and I could put that to use as being an emissary of this deliberate kindness on behalf of others.
Wow. Then what happened?
Well, so then as I was wrapping up this dream, basically, and the very final scenes of it, after I crossed the finish line, after running this very imperfect race, I had almost the experience of what people that have had near-death experiences, which I've had a few of, that they're called a life review. So like where you see the past and the present and the future sort of your existence. And so I saw people from the past, people in the present, and people in the future. And they were wearing all these different styles of clothing. They were speaking different languages. So I very quickly realized I was looking across time, and that all of them seemed to have a commonality of feeling some sort of pain. And I remember being in the dream and being like, I'm just one person. Why am I being shown this? How could I possibly have an impact here? Wow. And then I heard that inner voice say to me that you have your hands, you have your feet, you have your voice. Just start. And so I started as the dream figure to interact with these different faces and people that I was seeing, and all these different languages and everything. And what was so interesting was as I was watching the dream itself, everybody that was in the dream, including me, became lighter. And then I woke up and I was like, why was I shown that? What possible reason does this mean for anything? And so blogging was still pretty new at that point. And I began to sit down at the computer because I've always been a big journaler, and it's always allowed me to really tune into my intuition even more so. And so I started writing about the dream, and then I just started like free associating basically. And I was, talking about all the things that I had seen and about the lessons that I had been shown. And it was like, well, maybe I can still, there's still something else for me to do here. Maybe there is value in just me being me. And maybe rather than focus on what's not working for me right now, which is my business, and that I've tried everything to make it go, I've tried everything to force it, maybe I could just release it and not necessarily give up on it, but just let it be and take my attention elsewhere to what I did have a decision over, which was how I was seeing myself and how I was showing up in this new city. And so I decided to create this project that I called 32 Favors, which is because the longest day of any month is 31 days. And I was committing to do it one day beyond that because I thought that maybe that would inspire the universe to conspire with me to be able to pay my rent beyond just the 1 month that I knew I could cover. And that began 32 favors. And so for the next 32 days, I did favors on behalf of others. Most of these people were people I'd never met before and that I only connected with by putting myself out there and saying that I was available to be their emissary of deliberate acts of kindness on their behalf. And what I realized at the end of the 32 days, which now I had this amazing overflowing client calendar of people that wanted to work with me from all the relationships that I ended up meeting, was that I also was experiencing the intentionality and the essence of that deliberate kindness
Wow.
every time. It wasn't something that was apart from me, it was a part of me.
Wow. What a great story. What a great story. So you went on after that to taking that blog post of the 32 favors and then encouraging or showing it, I guess, to others in order to inspire them to do the same.
Yes, and it's not the number 32. Again, that's important. I've done now a group offering of this as well, taking people through in my private community called Sparkle Circle, where we went through 32 favors as a group. And I kept on reminding people that through it, that it wasn't about the number 32. 32 at the time was significant to me, but it was about, again, aligning with that essence and that energetic intention of deliberate kindness and realizing that if all you do today is breathe, you are worthy of feeling that inherent sense of infinite value that is within you. And that sometimes showing up for others and making yourself be available can be easier in the beginning than feeling like that you are fully worthy to receive that deliberate kindness towards yourself. But then somewhere along the way, you start to actually realize that every time I'm sharing something externally, I'm actually experiencing it by extension. And so I am actually receiving as I'm giving. And that's what makes it be much more holistic and holographic. And that's where that idea of quantum manifestation comes in, is that I realized in hindsight that while it appeared as though I was manifesting this experience of deliberate kindness and all of these relationships and all of these interactions that never would have happened had I just stayed feeling stuck and playing small and feeling like that I wasn't enough and all these other things, that instead I was also tuning into an energy of that it already had manifested too. So that there was a higher version of me, that same voice that I was hearing in the dream that told me to take a nap, that had been with me my whole life, that all of us have access to in whatever form seems to align with our hearts, right? That there's a part of us that even though it seems as though we're creating things right now, we're also tapping into the memory of the fullest and highest good and expression of our dreams that we're aligning with anytime we choose to believe we're worthy to receive the memory of it.
Wow. Absolutely beautiful. I love how you are explaining this in regards to manifestation on more of an actionable basis versus sitting.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be willing to be an active participant in your own life. But here's the thing that changes everything, and this is that secret ingredient that we were talking about in the beginning, is that when you take perfection off the table, then
Mm,
everything else is available to you and
mm,
accessible.
yeah.
So now you're always getting to see things as either a lesson or a blessing, and not with any denial. You're looking, but you're looking with a different intention. You're not looking to shame or blame or judge. You're looking to really actually see what's there. And
Yeah.
then to bring that light of knowing that your infinite value is inherent and that it's not something that is dependent on an external source validating you, that we can give away our power if we choose, but that natural sense of inherent self-worth being infinite is ours. And anytime we're willing to accept that and look at that with gentleness rather than judgment, that's what then allows us to create a belief system that is willing to believe we are worthy of self love, of self acceptance, of all these other self, sort of accolades that in the beginning can feel sort of like empty platitudes.
Yeah.
Because if we don't look at that underlying sense of worthiness first, but without judgment, then how can we actually take in something? Because we're going to find all the reasons to justify and defend against it, even if on the surface we're trying to do things like read all the books, go to all the classes. If there's still that underlying belief system that we haven't looked at, then we won't know it's there, but we will feel the effects of it by what we allow ourselves to experience and receive.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I'd love to kind of sidestep for a moment and just touch briefly on this thought that's coming up for me. What would you say? First of all, we have a ton of people watching live. And so
Hi.
I'm thinking audience while I am stating this. What is the difference between deliberate kindness and I want to say people pleasing, but I want to use a different word. I want to use what word do I want to use? Hang on one second. I have it. Seeking approval
Hmm.
because
Great
that's a little
question.
bit of a trap. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So here's the thing is deliberate kindness is about you and the relationship between you and the highest version of you, right? Whereas when you're seeking approval, it's about something external from you. So
Mm,
none of this experience has anything to do with externals. If anything, this allows you to navigate all of those externals that seem to change, that seem to be whimsical in their demands, that seem to come out of nowhere, that just sort of happen to you, but with this sense of what I call gentle agency, where you're empowered to be the decision maker. And you get to decide what lens am I going to interpret anything outside of me through, because now I know not only who I am, but what I am. What am I at my most essence? What am I that nobody else has any say in either giving me or taking away? It's mine already.
wonderful. So individuals who are already looking to shed, like I'm thinking of myself actually in this situation because it took me a long time to shed the codependency of
Mhm.
seeking external, exactly what you're saying, external approval. So this has absolutely nothing to do with what I will get back.
Correct.
Okay. Because that's what that is, right? Seeking approval is you're waiting to get a pat on the back in order to then feel better about yourself.
Yes, this comes directly from what I teach as living your own happily ever now, not after everything else is perfect. So you're not waiting anymore for anything external to give you permission. You're basically writing your own golden ticket of permission, and you get to decide when you want it to take that, have it take place, like what date you want to make it be your now as your now. And you also get to decide what it includes. So again, when you take perfection off the table, then everything else is available to you. The only thing that's impossible is perfection. So everything else is available and accessible, and only if you believe you're worthy of it, though. And so you need to look at the worthiness piece before you start to really actually feel that acceptance of yourself. But no, this is not about any sort of reciprocity.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that you're ever going to receive as you give, if that's how you're measuring things. It's more that you already have everything within you. So you're coming from being whole and then you're interacting. So you're no longer needing things to fill you up. You're showing up fulfilled by you recognizing your inherent and your infinite value.
Coming from being whole, what about individuals who are not whole at the moment? Is there some work that needs to be done before this, or can someone jump into this?
Well, so that's a great question. So here's the thing is that I like to look at it as that we all have our different costumes in life, right? And that our costumes, they show up in different forms. Now, some costumes, they feel like they're a tighter fit, and some of them feel like we have more room within them. Some of them feel like that they are more like customized for us individually, but that basically those costumes represent the seeming limitations that we have. And there's no judgment here and there's no denial here. So you want to look at that. But then if you think of it as a costume, then you understand that when you put on the costume, like with my daughter for Halloween or something, that even if she has a very convincing costume on the outside, she's still her underneath, right? So there's no amount of layering of different costumes that is going to negate her wholeness and herself that's underneath it.
Yeah.
But sometimes costumes can be very comfortable. Sometimes costumes can be very cozy, like a coat, and so we wear them. So can you look at your decision to wear them with compassion rather than judgment? If you can do so, then you're actually operating from a mindset of wholeness, even if you don't necessarily intentionally believe that you're whole yet, right? So you can start where you are, and if you can look at any of your choices to not feel whole, but with gentleness rather than judgment, then that must mean, even if on a totally subconscious level, you are operating from an inherent belief in your wholeness, even if you just haven't quite come into that awareness fully yet. There's still that memory within you that carries on a muscular level of essence, not on form, that there is this wholeness that is all there is within you. And that nothing in this world can give it to you. So nothing in this world can take it away from you. Now, that doesn't mean that you deny your experiences here. It doesn't mean that you try to, bliss out or bypass or any of those things. But if somehow you do find yourself blissing out or bypassing, again, if you can look at that decision with gentleness rather than judgment, you actually will see more of what's really there. And you will then look at it from a lens of purpose rather than trying to shame or blame or force yourself. And you'll actually be inviting that healing because you won't feel apart from the experience. You'll feel a part of that self-healing yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. I would love to dive deeper into this self-healing because I'm really getting a visual of I love the visual of the costume. So thank you so much for giving that to me and the audience listening right now. Um, so I'm seeing this. I am 100% grasping it. What are some steps or a step that a person who is not whole could make, outside of the deliberate kindness? What are some things that individual should or could be doing in order to start the healing process alongside?
Well, so that's a great question. So, one thing that can be really helpful is, again, if you're approaching it from being perfectly imperfect, rather than trying to make healing be some kind of perfection behavior, because then you're going to immediately be in a mindset of judgment. One of the core tenets of the teaching that I was mentioning, A Course in Miracles, that I teach and study, a spiritual thought system, is that ideas leave not their source. So whether or not you believe anything that the A Course in Miracles says or not, there is truth in that, in the fact that if we begin with an intentionality of judgment or of shame or blame, then even the most beautiful practices, according to this world, we're going to carry through that essence and that energy underlying it of judgment. So instead, if you can choose to find any practice, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's to ask yourself, when do I feel the most at ease? And whatever that is, maybe it's when you're playing with your children, maybe it's when you're baking a cake. It's not the what you're doing, it's the how, it's the whose hand you're holding. So if you're holding the hand of that inner voice, of that truth of you, then that is going to give you a very different experience than if you're doing the very same thing and you're holding the hand of that inner perfectionist or the ego or any of these other terms that people want to call inner critic. They're all the same. So basically, you get to choose what sort of meaning does something have by defining what the purpose of it is. So even if you're in the very beginning of looking at where you are, if all you do is just ask yourself, the last time that I can remember feeling safe was, and then just listen. And maybe it was staring at a picture that reminded you of your childhood. Maybe it was hearing a story that you listened to on an audiobook or something like that. Whatever it is, just allow yourself to know you can access that memory in a very, very, very real way. And then you ask yourself, okay, so what was it about that experience that represented safety to me? And then you listen. And you can either listen through, basically journaling your answers. You can listen in silence in some kind of traditional meditation. You can listen in the fact that you've got a beautiful blank canvas and you're painting a picture and you're feeling and hearing that memory. Because again, it's not the what, it's the how and with whom. And so you can start to take then very, very, very simple decisions and memories. And then you ask yourself, okay, so now that I've identified when that was for myself, how can I experience more of that again now? Even just 1% difference at a time. What choice can I make right now to tap into that energy, to experience whatever I'm doing now with that same essence and that energy? And when you start to believe that you're worthy of that experience, then that's where you start building and building and building. And then those 1%, they increase and they increase and they increase. And like with all the clients that I've supported, particularly within the Pilates space, we always start with that 1% of shift and shift and shift. And then little by little, they're at like 90 and they're like, wait, wow, I have a totally different experience here. And yet I didn't have any of the fear or the defenses that normally arise because I'm not doing it all at once. I'm doing it in parts, but I'm doing it with that intention of love and compassion and gentleness rather than judgment.
Beautiful. Girl, this is just such good stuff. Such good stuff. I took so many notes. For those listening live, for those listening on the replay, who are really resonating with what you're saying, who should be reaching out to you? Who do you help?
Well, I support, like you were saying, heart-centered, intuitive women that are really ready to once again believe in the reality of their dreams. And they don't actually even have to be that the dream is happening right now, right? It's just that you believe that you are worthy of receiving that. Because if you haven't even had just like 1% of an experience, and that's all it takes, it's just a little bit of willingness. It doesn't have to be this monumental shift. This isn't about having you be different. This is about aligning you with the sameness within you, that is bigger than any of these experiences that might have tried to tell you that you weren't enough. And so if you're in that space, if you're ready to be nurtured as a perfectly imperfect, active decision maker in your own life, and realize that you showing up as your perfectly imperfect self isn't just about you. It's about inspiring everyone around you. That if it's possible for you, it's possible for them too. And what an amazing world that would be if everybody saw themselves as a reflection of what was really possible, and that they were reflecting that together as one or not at all. And that's really that vision that I want each client to know that she is a part of and not apart from.
Beautiful. Where do you hang out on social media?
So you can find me in my private Facebook community called Sparkle Circle. You can also find me on Facebook under Nanci Reed. Send me a friend request. Say hi. Say that you heard me on the show today. You can also find me on Instagram at Nanci Ann Reed, ANN for Ann. And you can find me on Instagram at Happily Ever Living. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have my website, which is nancireed.com. You can also find my VIP links page at 32favors.com. And now you know why 32 Favors is so important to me as a name. And then you can also just send me a note, say hi. You can message me through my website under the contact page, and let's spark that beautiful, perfectly imperfect conversation. And I support heart-centered women that are ready to align their mind, body, and spirit with love rather than limitations. And that this could be done either through working in the modalities of Pilates, meditation, mindfulness. I'm also a certified Reiki teacher, and I also have the background with emotional intelligence and my master's degree in organizational psychology. So I do a lot of corporate work too. I wear a lot of different hats, and you probably do too if this is resonating with you. And here's the thing, is that the consistency is me at the core. And I'm coming from that intentionality of deliberate kindness. And then I get to wear whatever hat is going to be the most helpful and supportive in that situation. And also supporting people that are curious about A Course in Miracles, that are curious about spiritual life coaching. I have a certification in that too. So a lot of different letters after my name, but ultimately it came to that I am enough, always already as I am. And that if I can demonstrate what's possible for me, then it's possible for you too.
Beautiful. 32favors.com. Nanci
32 favors.
32 favors. I hope I'm not the only one that's doing that. 32 favors. I guess it depends how old you are. We had a 31 flavors right next to our house. We literally went every weekend growing up. So that's where that's coming from. 32favors.com. Nanci Reed. You can find her on Facebook. You can find her on Insta, on LinkedIn. It sounds like you could just Google her name, which is awesome, and find her in all the areas. For those of you
and I didn't even mention my book too, Happily Ever Now, which has won all these awards. So you can find that as well on Amazon or any other online retailers.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, any closing thoughts, Nanci, as we close up?
What I hope you're taking away from this time today is that now is always the perfectly imperfect time to begin living your own happily ever now, not after everything else is perfect. And that your self-net worth is priceless.
I love that. Happily ever now. Smart. Very, especially for us ladies who grew up in the Disney era of happily ever after. Well, this has been great, Nanci. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing such amazing value with us and taking some time out of your day. That brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you so much for inspiring us with all of your wisdom and life's journeys and challenges to get you to where you are right now. To our dedicated listeners who are still with us until the very end here, thank you. Make sure you follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way. Until next time, do something